All right, welcome to the third episode of the Player to Coach Pod. I'm your host, Josh Hill, and with me, I have my co host, good friend, and also both in each other's weddings. It's another fun fact. My buddy
That's true.
Jordan Alexander. What's going on, dude?
How's it going? How's it going? I'm really excited about today and the topics that we're going to talk through. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah, we're switching up a little bit. We had a guest that was going to come on, ended up not working, which is fine because that's going to happen. But we also have a bunch of topics that we want to hit on over the year, just with Jordan and myself. So we're gonna just dive right into it. We're gonna try to hit this one early because the playoffs are moving, the NBA playoffs, and we don't want to talk about one thing and then by the time the podcast comes out, everything's passed. So we're just gonna talk about the first round of the playoffs as a whole. Um, some things in particular. I'm just gonna be forthcoming. Kevin Durant is my favorite player of all time, and so I want to get all of the preconceived stuff out of the way. I try to be as unbiased as possible when it comes to my fandom. But I do want to talk a little bit about the Boston Brooklyn series. Truthfully, I mean, let me know what you think, Jordan. But that was the first time that I've seen multiple games in a row where Kevin Durant was legitimately stopped. Like that's part of why I'm a fan is everyone has bad games, everyone struggles, and a bad game for him is he gets double teamed the whole entire game. So is it really a bad game? But usually whenever he kind of falls short, he comes back with a vengeance, and that's usually just what happens. Um, what did you see from that series that was different than what you've seen before? Is Boston just that great of a defense, or was something missing from Brooklyn? I'm curious your thoughts.
Um, I honestly think that Boston is that good on defense. Um, I think that their team defense this season was great and is great. I think the word that comes to mind for me as far as how KD plays that it was difficult. Everything was difficult. Everything was challenged. Just about everything was contested. He saw multiple bodies in front of him in the half court in transition. Nothing seemed to come easy at all. Um, he had a pretty decent game, I think, in game four. He took a ton of shots, but still it was difficult. Um, and I think that just goes to show how good Boston was on defense. I think they were locked in, and I think they had a game plan, and it worked four times in a row. Um, I don't know as far as what could have Brooklyn done different. I'm not sure. I just feel like everything was loaded up to KD, so there maybe there would be some adjustments as far as getting him some easier looks, but part of it too is if you're just watching the games, you have a guy like Brown for them who's just taking wide open floaters in the middle of the key. So it's you're still getting really good shots. It's just not coming from KD. And so I really think Boston just tried to make someone else besides him beat them. Um, and obviously they did it, and it was a sweep. So yeah, I don't know. What about you? What do you
I mean,
think?
I think it's interesting to have basketball can be really really complicated when you do a deep dive, but also it's sometimes really really simple that
Mm-hmm.
everybody one through eight on Boston all two-way players like obviously some great offensive players, but all of them play good defense, and that's just couldn't be further from the case with Brooklyn. I heard somebody say that Brooklyn is just a bad team with good talent, and I think that's couldn't be more true. I mean, you look like a guy like Patty Mills or Seth Curry, they don't, or even Kyrie, they don't really bring anything to defense. They're not really a staple. They can do some things, but nowhere in the same stratosphere as guys I mean, depend the first guard defensive player of the year, Marcus Smart, Jalen Brown. You talked about even White for Boston. Obviously Tatum, and then Big Bob Williams in the middle. There's so much defense there that even just simply thinking about there's two sides of the game, and Boston's really good on both sides, and Brooklyn just isn't. I think like
Yeah.
it's obviously way more complicated than that, but it's also not at the same time.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I'm talking about Brown for the Nets. He was the one that's just
Right,
taking wide
right.
open shots, right? And yeah, but I would agree with you. I also think like not even talking about Brooklyn, I just feel like Tatum was great. Like he was just great. And I don't know, I feel like I've been a little skeptical of him because I don't know compared to other NBA superstars, I sometimes question how good he makes others around him and his like passing ability. But to be honest, like Boston plays really good team basketball. At least they have been. They have caught stride, and he's looked really good, and Jaylen Brown has looked really good. Obviously, they lost today, and it's funny. We have a player on our team here at Bushnell who's like a diehard Celtics fan, and as soon as they won their series, I was like, watch out!" I honestly, I've thought this. I still think Milwaukee is the favorite in the East. Like people just like forget how good Giannis is. It's
Yeah.
like he's arguably the best player in basketball right now. Um, and so obviously I think that's going to be a great series and I don't know who's going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee won. Like I just
Ye-
wouldn't. They're the returning
Absolutely.
champs. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's like um as just like a basketball fan, like how do you not love Giannis? Like how?
Right.
I he plays. Sorry, my puppy wants to get out. He plays so hard, like it's ridiculous. Like he's got great character as it is. Like plays so aggressively hard, like on
Mm-hmm.
both ends, and like there's and kind of like opposite of like I don't mean to dunk on Ben Simmons too much, but like kind of the opposite effect of Ben Simmons of like he had lots of holes in his game the last several years when it came to shooting where like you could just leave him on the 3 point line and it's like, hey, he might beat us like one game, but it's probably not going to happen too often. Or like, hey, just foul him, send him the free throw line. But he's taken away all those options where like he's a legitimate threat from deep. Like he has that turn away jumper where it's like, bro, if he starts, that's kind of like the evolution where like you could be a good scorer, but when you can hit that turn away in big moments, then like you're pretty solidified. And then
Right.
like yeah, from the free throw line, like he's been knocking it down. So like that on top of everything else, like how do you not love him? How do you not become a fan of him? And yeah, like they won against this great defense today, and they didn't even have Middleton. Like who knows when he's going to be back? And so it was in Boston as well. So like I even just watching today is like I don't know how they don't go win it. I don't know how.
Yeah. I
And I know their surrounding pieces have been shooting like really really
Yep.
well, and that might die down, but I mean, just the confidence that they must have of like, hey, we don't even have Middleton right now. We just took out the best defense in the league. Yeah, it was incredibly impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of just mentioned it with the shooters around him. What they've built around him, I think, is great, even without Middleton. But Giannis's willingness to pass the basketball is what makes him lethal. Um, he's not like just putting his head down and forcing the issue. Um, I mean, he had a triple double today, so it's like he's just hitting wide open shooters, just wide open shooters. So yeah, they're not my favorite though. They're not my
Really,
favorite to win. No,
not
I
your
think they have
favorite
a
to
good
win it.
chance, but they're not my favorite to win.
Here, hang on to your
So
favorite. Hang on to your favorite.
okay,
We'll
okay,
hit on that a little bit later. Let's
all right.
another one that's just like has been looming in my mind, and I still don't even know if I have the right words to put it, to figure this one out, which is great because now we do podcasts and that's like the only way to do things now. But just like Utah Jazz, like they're dead, right? Like they can't, they got to blow it up. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think so. I honestly like. I hate to say it, I guess, for like any Utah fans out there. I was never a believer in the first place. Um, I just think that they maybe lack some important pieces, I guess, especially, you know, over maybe not this year so much compared to the Eastern Conference, but in recent years past, the West has been so guard dominant. And yeah, Donovan Mitchell's great. Like, don't get me wrong. I think he's an NBA superstar. Do I think that he could carry them? No. And maybe that's a bold take, but I just don't. I don't. And I do. I think they have to blow it up. I think that they have to split up Mitchell and Gobert. I think the way that it works for them, I if I had to guess, or without looking exactly what they could afford or how they could do it, I feel like Gobert has to get traded, and I feel like they have to bring in another wing guard player that is a star, and have a duo at that position. Um, I feel like right now in the NBA, there's only maybe a handful of big men that you can consider part of like a dynamic duo. Embiid, Jokic, I don't know, maybe a couple others, but I feel like you got to have a duo with your guards and wings, and then you just got to have a five man that can rebound and play some defense. Honestly,
Right.
so yeah, I feel like they got to blow it up. Honestly, I just feel like the West is too tough, and even though they play really well in the regular season and they're middle of the pack or higher, it seems like recently, I never felt like they were a favorite ever. Never was on that train. So, what about you?
Yeah, I think I had a there was a period of time where I kind of believed in them, but I think it was one of those moments where like you would like to think that playing good basketball is always the way that you can win, and that's like what you would like to think. But I think, especially when it comes to the NBA and just like the way that it's set up, the rules that are implemented, and like how great players are, you also need greatness. And I agree with you where um, it's hard for me to really say if Donovan is the true number one who can win it for you. I tend to lean no. I think he could just be a really high end number two superstar.
Yeah.
Um, and just like you were saying, there's yeah, like the amount of bigs that can really do it for you is slim. Really slim. And like I don't want to say slim to none, but like I kind of also do because we haven't really seen that recently. Um, I think like you said, Jokic, Embiid, and then like AD if you want to count him as a big, even though he's a four. But anyway, yeah, it's weird to say this, but they're not really that great of a defensive team. They're a great defensive system because of Gobert, but then that all goes out the window when you have somebody who can bring him out to the 3 point line. And like, there's always ways to scheme around that, but there's always going to be moments. Um,
Well,
but
that's
yeah, it's
exactly what Dallas did. I mean,
right.
Dallas just took advantage of the fact that they kept switching. It was like,
Yeah.
okay, so you're gonna have a Luca Gobert ISO situation. Good luck. So yeah, I mean you're just either sending Luca to the rim with Gobert as the primary defender. So now he's not as big of a threat to block the shot or like classic Luca step back, right? So it's like
Right.
yes, I'm not discrediting how good Gobert is. He's great on defense, but not in that situation.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason that Dallas kept doing that.
Right. For
So
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
The
know. I think they got to
schematics of the
blow it up.
NBA. Yeah, I agree. I didn't just think like the schematics of the NBA are just too complex. They can all they're gonna do, especially in the playoffs when they have this much time to prepare. It's like, oh, this is what they don't do well. You're
Right.
gonna have to do that exact same thing the whole entire series and find a way to beat us.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, they're just not built for it. And then even like Dallas getting, I know they got one win. Do they get two wins without Luca? It's like,
Two
dude,
without him.
it's like,
Yeah.
come on, that was
Brunson dropped
extreme.
like 41 or something like
Right,
that.
that which was awesome to see, and like credit to him. I mean, he's a hooper, and like really, this might be a year where he finds a different team after this because he showed that he can do it by himself in those moments. But yeah, I mean, if you can't get a win against Dallas without Luca, you're not going very far.
Yeah.
Um, all right. D- did it seem so? This is like one of the first playoffs in a while where there were no lower seeds that beat a higher seed, and obviously there's only one sweep, and there's usually like another one mixed in there, but there weren't any game sevens. Did this seem like a really like non-competitive playoffs to you? Like first round? I mean, like obviously there was
Um,
games, and like there was like with the Timberwolves series against the Grizzlies, like that was pretty awesome. But I mean, like most of them ended 4-1, 4-2, like no game sevens. You had the one sweep. It seemed pretty cut and dry. The better seeded team was gonna win.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it obviously the higher seeds won, but I don't know if I would say it was non-competitive. I think that there were still a lot of really good games, even though it maybe teetered towards the higher seed winning in most situations. I don't know. I feel like one obvious factor, there's been a lot of injuries
Right.
um, around the playoffs, and so I think that has maybe hurt some teams.
Yeah.
And not knowing if they were going to get someone back or, something like that. Like for example, like would the Phoenix New Orleans series would that have been done sooner if Booker wasn't out? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe New Orleans was playing great, but still, like I don't know. I don't want to say non-competitive because I still
Right.
think it was a lot of competitive basketball, but definitely were some blowouts. I'll say that.
Yeah.
There were some blowouts, like Milwaukee, Chicago. There was a blowout.
Yeah.
Miami, Atlanta. There was a blowout. I mean, early in the series, Golden State was up big a couple of times over Denver.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would use non-competitive just because
Yeah. That was
I
a
feel
pretty
like it was
aggressive
competitive,
statement.
there was a lot of game sixes.
Yeah.
Um,
That's true.
but yeah, I don't know. I At the same time, I do agree with what you were saying. It never felt like the higher seeds were going to lose.
Yeah. Yeah,
I would agree with
there was
that.
a moment early on where I was like, "Dang, can the Timberwolves pull this off?" Because I mean, that was a really exciting series. But
Yeah, and then they
you
just
really
blew
saw
like
their
two
youth.
games.
Yeah, you really saw their youth. I mean, they what was it? Game four, I think they had multiple 20-point leads that they gave up and lost. It's like, dude, you can't
Yeah,
can't do that. And those I result to like blaming coaching on that one because like there's got to be something you can do. Like you have young players, you have to be the one to be in their ear to be about, hey, like get the most out of your shot clock, get the most out of your offense, like find good looks. Use timeouts to break momentum. Like drop your best plays to your best players. You can find ways to hold on to a lead if you feel like
right,
the better team is coming back. But to blow multiple big leads like that in the same game and end up losing, like that's demoralizing to feel like, oh, we should be ahead by way more, but we only have a 2 point lead, and
right.
that's just the mind games with basketball. But yeah, that was all right. So now, who do you have winning? You had kind of alluded to not it not being the Bucks. Who do you think takes this thing home? Well, who do you think ends up in the finals, and who do you think wins it?
Um, who do I think ends up in the finals? I think it ends up being Milwaukee Golden State, and I think Golden State will win.
Hmm.
I think today their win against Memphis was obviously huge. Um, and for anyone that watched that game, holy cow, will Memphis just box out? Like second chance after second chance, and Golden State didn't make them pay very much, but it was just like missed opportunities for Memphis to go down and score
Right.
or make Golden State have to foul or whatever. So it was just like, holy cow. I only caught the end of that game because I was traveling today. But yeah, just, I don't know. I think it's funny, and I said this last summer, um, with some peers and other coaches and players that I'm around on a daily basis. It's like, okay, watch, you guys are going to forget about Golden State. It's like, if Clay can come back healthy and be anywhere close to what he used to be, I don't think anyone would say like that isn't with him on a daily basis. So people like you and me that are just watching, I'm not sure anyone would have guessed that Jordan Poole would be playing this great.
Right.
Um, but like, holy cow! So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean the it's funny. A lot of people I think forget how hard a defense has to work against Golden State strictly because of how they move off of the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, they're constantly running off of screens. They're constantly making the extra pass. They're constantly taking what the defense is going to give them whether that's hitting Draymond on a short roll and him being the decision maker. It's funny to me when a lot of people like talk about that after the highlight is done. They're watching it. But, you know, they forget like Steph is moving literally the whole game. He's moving the whole game and he can shoot it from anywhere. So, you know, like guys are going to get exhausted. And that was like Dylan Brooks's assignment today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, I haven't looked really, but I don't think he shot it great today. Dylan Brooks on the other end of the floor. And it's like, well, he was primarily focused on guarding Steph. It's like their ability to move without the basketball and then shoot, and now they have a third splash bro, basically. Like,
Yeah.
good luck. They're unguardable, just about if they're making shots.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, kind of similar to the Giannis situation. Like, I understand, like, because Golden State has been so good for so long now. Like, other than their year where literally everybody on their team that was good was injured. Other than that year, like, how do you not love to watch Golden State play? Like, if you're a basketball fan, like, even
right.
if you hate their guts for whatever reason because of whatever team you like, it's you can't not appreciate how great they are and why they're great. Like, not
Yep.
only just because it's not just Steph Curry that just carries the whole load. Like, just
Right.
to understand like how important Draymond, like just Draymond alone to that team, like how much of a leader, like how aggressive he is on defense, like willing to be the guy to like, you know, take all the toughest assignments. And like you can like you always hear it preached to like talk on defense, and that's obviously like one of the biggest key factors to having a good defense. But you can like from the camera watching on TV, you can see him talking like that type of stuff. And then just like the amount of times where it seems like he has an open lane but he doesn't care, like he's just going to find his shooters to get them in the best position. It's incredible to watch. Like
Right.
there's nobody that plays like, you know, as good of team basketball as them, on top of
I
having the
agree.
superstar talent. So it's pretty incredible. So it's I also think it's a cool combination of like you have your superstars of, you know, Steph and Clay, and then you have Jordan Poole. It's kind of stepping into that role, but then you also have guys that are like wanting to either reprove themselves, you know, when it comes to Wiggins, guys like him, and then you also got you know, guys that are coming off the bench that seem to have that like they're fighting for their life mentality, which is
Mm-hmm.
that's a perfect mixture. So yeah, they're incredible to watch. Okay,
Yeah,
so you have Golden State winning the championship this year, right?
I do. I do.
Okay.
And I think I just want to add what, you know, to what you just said, like about Draymond. It's funny, I actually, um, I was listening to some analysts and everything, and like, it's so funny how much people look at box scores to judge if a player's good.
Right.
And I think a key one that people miss out on is a plus minus. And just like look at Draymond's plus minus when the Warriors are playing well and they're winning.
Right.
Uh, it's funny. I like actually like took it to social media not that long ago. I was just like, you have to like know that Draymond's better than his box score,
Right.
just from exactly what you just talked about, like his talking ability and his emotional leadership. Yes, he gets out of hand. Yes, he'll jaw and people hate him and he'll run around the court yelling at the crowd
He also got a
like he did
flagrant two
today.
today. That
Yeah,
was
which is
awesome.
garbage. That was
Not
garbage,
not the
flagrant too.
flagrant. Yeah, I mean that. I love him like running around waving up.
Yeah, but
That
running
was
around
awesome.
like
Yeah.
he wants to not be liked. That like gets his team going.
Yeah.
Like you think that like crowd yelling at the Warriors doesn't make Steph and Clay better shooters?
Oh
You're
yeah.
kidding me. Like so it's
Yeah.
just like yeah, he's like way more important than like just his stats. But yeah, I mean I do. I have the Warriors winning it. That was my pick before the first round.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that unlike Utah, I don't think Golden State's dead. Like they just got the injury bug a couple of years, you know, these last couple of
Oh
years,
yeah, for sure.
and no, like they're dangerous. I wouldn't be surprised if they won. I wouldn't be surprised, but they gotta win the series and possibly go through Phoenix or Dallas or whoever. So I don't know.
Right. I'm still struggling to figure out if I think that Phoenix would win or if Golden State would win. I think that's going to be an awesome, um,
That
um,
would be that would be
Western
an
Conference.
awesome series.
That would. And
Yeah.
yeah, I really, really depending. Unfortunately, now like so much of this just comes down to injury. Like you talk
Yeah.
about Middleton, talk about Devin Booker, talk about those guys where it's like, uh, if everyone's healthy, I think it would be Phoenix and Bucks. But I think with depending on how long Booker's out, wait, he's back, right?
He's
I think
back. He came
I think
back
he's
and
back,
he closed the series against New Orleans. Yeah.
which is honestly surprising. I mean, it was a hamstring, right? Like
Yeah.
those are scary to rush back. So hopefully he stays healthy. So honestly, with that, it's a little bit
Okay.
of a
So
toss up for
yeah.
me
So who's
still. I
who's your
know.
pick then?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I think Bucks win it.
Okay. No
If
matter no matter what.
I think Bucks win it no matter what.
Okay.
Given if Middleton can come back soonish. I mean, if this ends up lingering on, obviously, like my answer is going to change. But yeah, I don't really know who comes out of the West. So it really does come down to Golden State and Phoenix because they like both of them kind of have really similar. They play differently, but they have similar strengths. Where it's like I have a lot of two-way guys. You have lots of star power, but then you also have lots of like veteran leadership on there as well. Like Chris Paul going 14 for 14 the other day,
Right.
unbelievable.
Right.
And then just the amount of two-way guys that both teams have, and like that's
Yeah.
that's really the key to success. You can't have too many guys that are role players or guys off the bench that are only defense or only offense. That's a it's such a huge weakness for a team, and they both have that. Um,
Phoenix
so
especially. Phoenix
right,
especially. They have
right,
really good individual defenders
yeah,
in that starting five between Chris Paul, Jay Crowder, and Bridges. Like those guys are really good individual defenders.
right.
Um, yeah, it'd be interesting. I do have to ask because we haven't talked about the one seed in the East at all. Like, and I feel like this has just been the whole season,
Yeah,
but no one talks about Miami
yeah.
and Heat culture and all of that. And are they just gonna make the Eastern Conference Finals, beating a Philly without Embiid right now, and then lose? Like, are they just gonna lose because I mean, they flat out like shut down Trey Young
Yeah,
for like 3 out of 5 games basically,
yeah,
and I mean, they play team basketball just as good as anyone. So
right,
I don't know. They're not irrelevant, but no one's picking them.
right. I don't. That's one of the teams that I don't know how to explain, but I just don't believe in, and it goes against everything that you would want to look for in a team. Well balanced, deep, great culture, great coaching. You have superstar talent, like so many defenders on their team. Um, yeah, it's like they have the whole recipe, but for whatever reason, I just don't see it happening. I don't. I can't tell you why.
Yeah,
I just don't. Um,
I'm
and
with you. I'm with you. I just had to bring it
right,
up.
and I don't.
But
And I don't know if you are able to kind of pinpoint it any better than me, but I like. Does it kind of feel to you like they need like a superstar in their prime? Like they don't like they have stars, whether it be Bam, who's a little bit up and coming. Like yeah, I don't think he's at his peak yet. You have guys like Jimmy and Lowry who are on the back end of their peak, obviously still great and like not like dead weight by any means, but even those guys at their greatest peak weren't like absolute number one options in my mind. So
yeah,
like for them to not be at their peak and then even then not be a number one because it's like I don't know. It's even as I say it, I still go back and forth. I'm not really sure. How do you have a better way of describing that, or do you kind of agree?
I kind of agree, but I think the way I would describe it is like, don't get me wrong, Jimmy Butler's an NBA All Star, but in like my hierarchy of NBA stars, like he's not tier one.
Yeah,
Like I think you have like NBA superstars, guys that would be in that category. You're like, okay, KD, Steph, LeBron, those type players, right? Like
yeah,
Jimmy Butler is an NBA All Star, but I don't think that he's an NBA superstar, and I think that most people would agree with that.
Mm.
But at the same time, like he just scored 45 in a game in game one. But I also feel like he could have a game where he doesn't isn't even relatively close to that. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think that they have like their. I don't think they have that one guy that they can just lean on literally every single night. I think Jimmy Butler is the closest to what they have, but I don't think that he's an every single night type of guy on the offensive end of the floor. He is defensively.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would
Mm.
agree with you. You think of like, if you take four of the main teams that we've really talked about, you have a guy like Steph on Golden State who you can lean on. You have Booker, and Chris Paul, like, but mainly Booker, probably with this
Mm.
current team. You have Giannis, and then it's like, okay, you're talking about Miami.
Yeah. It's
Jimmy
like who
Butler's
do you
not in
point
that
to
he's
first?
not in that conversation.
Yeah.
Embiid is for Philly, but I mean he's hurt right now. I
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily pick them to win that series without Embiid.
Yeah.
Um, if James Harden was old James Harden, then I might pick them because he's
Right.
just like deadly, but he's not really playing like that. So
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. I think that's how I would describe it. I just don't think that Jimmy Butler's in that conversation, even
Yeah.
though he's awesome.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. It's weird. I was listening to All the Smoke the other day, and like it's it's funny to think of like, oh, like, these guys probably have the answers. They played in the NBA. You got Stack Jack, and then you have Matt Barnes, and they said almost the exact same thing that we were, and it was like they're really good and they have everything, but I just for whatever reason can't see it happening. So I don't really know. And it would be cool to see them succeed, honestly, because they have a really cool recipe. I like a lot of the players that they have in their team.
Yeah,
Even adding guys like PJ Tucker, who I'm a big fan of. Um, just and then you talk about you want teams that do things the right way to win. Just like as
right.
a fan, and they do things right. Um, and yeah, I don't know. It's a tough situation. But
Yeah,
as we transition the conversation, um, one thing about the NBA playoffs, if you're not a current NBA player, that usually means that you're in your off season whenever the NBA playoffs are on. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we kind of approach our off seasons, just kind of uh, the topic of the off season, what it should mean to you, what we did during the off season, and those types of things. I'm curious as a player, whether that be middle school, high school, even college. What did off seasons look like for you? What whether it be traveling to play outside your state, whether it be workouts. What was your off season kind of like?
yeah. Um, well, you mentioned middle school. Middle school wasn't much of an off season because the team that I played for, we played 11 months out of the year, basically 10 months out of the year. So August was kind of like the month off, and yeah, because I was a kid, um, playing 10 or 11 months out of the year. I did workouts in August, but I also enjoyed that as the last part of summer, and my birthday was in August, or is in August, and so um, yeah, as an 11, 12, 13-year old, off season probably looks a little bit different. Uh, but in high school, um, let's see, high school, I played AAU. Like as soon as the high school regular season got over, all the way through the end of July. Um, Pretty similar, I guess, to like a middle school type of schedule, where like your high school season, at least mine went from uh, like November through March, and then we had AAU started in April. That went through May, and then in June it was a little bit of both AAU and high school summer league. And then in July, it was back to just straight AAU to finish up that summer. And then August was kind of just, workouts. And then September, we started fall ball. So back with like AAU slash high school team. So off season is a little bit different, I think, in high school than it is in college and definitely in the NBA. For myself, when I was in high school, I actually did CrossFit, um, like outside of the high school season while I was playing AAU during high school summer ball. So I did CrossFit like 8 months, 8, 9 months out of the year, uh,
Dang.
usually like 4 or 5 days a week. Um, and that actually helped me. So one of my old basketball trainers, which I'm hoping that we can get him on here in a future episode, um, but Travis Melvin, he worked me out growing up, like starting like fifth grade, and then he started actually a CrossFit gym while he was at the same time doing basketball training. So
Hmm.
I started CrossFit actually in a lighter way as a middle schooler, and then took it super serious throughout high school. And that it changed my body, which was great because I was a small guy. I needed to put on weight. Like the summer between my sophomore and junior year of high school, I put on like 15 pounds of straight muscle. Like I had like a 6 or 7% body fat measured at one. I was in great shape, and I needed to. Um, so that's kind of like what it was in high school. I was really just like trying to get recruited. I was working out all the time. I was in the gym all the time. I was playing AAU. We were traveling outside the state, up and down the West Coast, over to Vegas, all that. And then in college, off season looks a little bit different, right? And it could look different program by program. You have maybe specific, training regiments from your coaching staff or training staff. Um, I spent a lot of time in the weight room, a lot of time getting shots up, playing in open gyms, on and off of campus. Uh, really like tried to hone back in on eating a little bit better. I'm gonna be honest. I never had like the greatest diet as an athlete, which I think if we were to start talking about things that we would change or regret, I don't think I had the best diet as an
Hmm.
athlete. So I wish I took that a little bit more serious and just kind of like toughened it up and like was really strict about my diet. But regardless, I still try to get in really good shape in the off season. Um, Maybe I'd take like a week or two off after the season in college. Um, you know, Maybe I went on a vacation with family or hung out with friends a little bit more, had a little bit more of a social life during that time. But then, you know, I spent a lot of time in the weight room and getting shots up in the off season. That was kind of what it looked like for me without getting into specifics. What about you? Was your experience dating back to like middle school, high school, all that?
Yeah, I mean, very different than yours actually. I before I say it, I think one of my not really a regret, but something that I wish I had. I didn't really have someone that had been through this before, and so my all of my development really came from me just like loving to play basketball. So it was pretty
Yeah.
unregimented. Um, you kind of hear all the cliches of like just stay in the gym, like just keep working, just stay in the gym. So I think I really my only experiences like traveling out of state and playing AU was in middle school. I didn't do that in high school at all, um, which I think really hurt because I was, I mean, I was the only player on that team to go on and play college ball. So like I wouldn't necessarily say I was leaps and bounds like the best player on my high school team, but I was one of the best players on the team. And in my mind, I thought I was solid. Obviously not what you want to have your mindset be when you're in high school. Just kind of think that you're all good, and it simply came down to like lack of exposure. I didn't see it. I didn't see what other people were doing. I didn't go to these tournaments in Vegas and California and Seattle and all these ones where you go and you play against future NBA players or high level D1 players and you absolutely get stomped on. You're like, wow, I have a long way to go. I honestly didn't really get that until my freshman year at NCU. I just really didn't.
Hmm.
So that was a big wake up call and something that I wish, obviously is on me. It's not something that I don't take, um, I don't take any responsibility for. But again, I didn't have anybody in my ear young saying, "Hey, this is what you need to be doing. You need to be traveling out of state. You need to be doing this, this, this." I just didn't have it. So I remember in my middle school years, my dad worked really close to one of the only gyms in the Eugene Springfield area where we grew up, and So there was, 3-4 days a week I would just go with him to work. He would drop me off at the gym. I would work out and just kind of like hang out there at the gym and eat lunch, and then I would just go work out again. So like, um, in that sense, I played a lot of basketball. Was it like everything was scripted out and I was getting a specific amount of shots and working on all the things I need to be working on? No, but I was at least in the gym, and I think honestly that's a good start. But I mean, really, my high school off seasons were a lot of injuries. So my
Yeah.
my high school off seasons unfortunately weren't incredibly productive all the time, because I think my freshman year at NCU was the first summer that had gone by that I wasn't in a boot for some reason, one reason or another. So lots of injuries. I also played football my junior senior year of high school, so there's a lot of two a days during the summer. But I mean, basketball was always a priority. It was always I remember that, my freshman sophomore year of high school, the football coach almost every other day, begging me to go play for their team.
Yeah.
Finally gave him my junior senior year, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, I think back to the um, something that I wish I would have known that, and I'm curious your thoughts on this kind of line of thinking. I think it's more important to stay consistent in your workouts, whether it be a good or bad workout in your mind. But for me, what I did is I didn't always work out a specific amount of times every week, or like I didn't work out every day. But when I did, I went really, really hard, and I did it for a really long time. But then there would be a few days break in between. And that was something I think I really missed out on, where there's moments in my playing career where I could really turn it on. But there's just like that lack of consistency, which like obviously is just being consistent in your work. So I'm really quick just to get your thoughts before I kind of finish up mine. I'm curious kind of your thoughts and feelings on that kind of a thinking of, because this is something that I tell to people. I do think it's more important that you stay consistent, whether if you go to your workout and you don't feel great, and like, hey, just get something done, go get shots up, even if it's just form shoot for 30-40 minutes, just go do that. Make sure you do that every day or whatever it may be, versus hey, go and make sure you have the most perfect and get the most out of this workout, and then like have a few days gap in between. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Um, I think I lean more towards being consistent,
Mm,
um, as far as being there more often, getting your workouts done more often.
mm,
Um, Now, with that being said, I think it goes without saying, and I think most people would agree, like while you're there doing a workout, you need to make it worth it,
right.
right? Like not just going through the motions. Um, but I think consistency is key, as especially if you want to see growth and improvement.
Mm,
Um, I've heard this analogy before, okay, but if you go, let's say you're someone that's like trying to go to the gym and you're trying to lose weight, okay? If you go to the gym and you do a workout one day and you come back home and you look in the mirror that same day, you're not going to see a difference, are you? Right? Like you're
right.
not. But how do you see that difference? Consistency, right? Like you have to be consistent and you have to create a foundation and building blocks to improve on something.
Yeah.
Um, like if I was going to go work out and try to lose weight or something like that, if I do that once or twice a week, I am not going to see a change at all.
Mm,
Um, like you need to be consistent. And I'm not saying that you have to go do a basketball workout for 2 hours to 3 hours every day. Like that's not what I'm saying. I think you have to, try to have a goal in mind of what you want to accomplish while you're there, though.
mm,
If you're just getting, let's say you're getting shots up for 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, well, you need to specify how many makes you're going to get,
right.
right? And you're not done until you have that many makes.
Mm,
And then maybe you do extra, right? I think you have to have goals. Um, that's how I would lean. I think that you have to be consistent. I don't think you can spread things out. I just think you're lacking. You're not going to reach potential if you're spreading workouts out like that. I don't know.
right. Right. I kind of to echo your sentiment, but I think a little bit in a different point of view. I mean, so much of basketball is mental, and like I think confidence, a lot of it comes. I mean, not only like improvement comes from being consistent with like, um, muscle memory and like everything that comes, like that's what working out is, like building muscle memory and building the right habits. But I think also when you're just you're honest with yourself about getting more work in, then you become more confident. And so
Right.
on those days where you're off shooting, you're like, no, I've done the work. Like it's, if I just keep pushing through and doing the right things, it's gonna go in. Versus
Yeah.
if deep down I really didn't work on this that much, then like it's, that's where your confidence is gonna waver. So I think that's so much of it where you know anybody can put up as many videos as they want over the summer of what they've done, but when you're in the game and like and just like anybody's ever said about learning about someone's character or who somebody really is, you have to wait until they go through a hard time. So like when you're a shooting slump is when you're really going to find out if you've done the right
Yeah.
work or not, or if you've
Yeah.
got several bad games of not shooting, of oh, I had a bad shooting day, I need to go put up extra shots. It's like, well, now you're going to put up extra shots where you're not preparing to make shots before, so now you're going to change things. So like I think that's a big thing of like, oh, I want to show that I'm wanting to improve my game and I'm going to stay late tonight. It's like, well, that's good, but if you don't usually do that, then like you should rethink how you're preparing for your season, and how you're preparing yourself. um, Try to think, to kind of bring it back to, when I was in college and kind of my process. A lot of the summers where, um, this is actually kind of a funny story. So I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about this coach and kind of what he has meant. He recently passed away in the last year or two. I forget exactly when, but Coach Litzenberg,
Mm-hmm.
just absolute legend of a coach, and we'll kind of get into his resume some other time. But I remember one of my first days there at NCU. He changed my free throw routine. And he also changed my jump shot. And that's a that's a really hard thing to hear from somebody, especially when like you finally made it to like this next level and you're like, oh, okay, so everything you've known, we're gonna change
Yeah.
that. And so
Yeah.
it's a big hit on your pride at first, and it takes a lot of trust in somebody. But I can confidently say that the things that he gave me, was like a really important driving point later that summer. And like still things to this day that I have that mental checklist of like my free throw routine or like my shot form, where it's like I could have not shot in the ball in like 3 months, and I'm pretty confident that it'll go in because I have these things. So that was kind of a funny story of just like, you achieve and accomplish something, but then somebody wants you to change kind of what helped you get there,
Mm-hmm.
is a fascinating thing. And I can see how, even just kind of where I'm at right now, like when I'm working with kids, there's kind of this like, oh, you're in high school, so like, is it really worth it to make these adjustments to your jump shot now? It's like, I think it's always worth it to make an
Yeah.
adjustment to somebody's jump shot, and it'll just come down to their mental makeup. If they're going to deny it and say no, it's going to be too hard, I don't want to do it, or if you're going to have the psychotic brain like I did and be like, no, I enjoy being told that what I'm doing is wrong and that this is what you need to do to fix it. And like just staying on the gun all summer, just like having the rebounding gun, and just having that mental battle with yourself to really fight for perfect form. I really enjoyed that. And I don't, um a spoiler alert, if you want a good jump shot, it's really boring. It just is.
Yeah.
So sorry to spoil that for everybody who wants to be a good shooter. But um what does the off season look like now? So you're an assistant coach for the college level. What does that look like now? Kind of from start to finish, kind of as a 30,000 foot view of what your off season looked like.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it looks a lot different as a coach than it did as a player because I'm not playing anymore. So it's different stuff, right? It's a different
Nice.
checklist.
Yeah.
Um, I think from the start of the off season, it's continued recruiting from what we were already doing during the regular season. Uh, a big part of my role is recruiting. Um, So being on the phone, text messages, going to tournaments, going to games, uh, having visits, players come and visit. Uh, like recruiting is probably the biggest part of the off season, and I thoroughly enjoy recruiting. Like I
Hmm.
love recruiting. I love the relationship building. I love the grind of recruiting. I love how competitive recruiting can be. Uh, I love recruiting. Like
Hmm.
it is my favorite. It's probably besides the actual coaching itself, recruiting is probably like my favorite. And
Hmm.
um, I think a big part of that is just because I love like building relationships, um, and I like um, building relationships with our recruits. I think that's a really cool thing. Um, I had certain relationships when I was getting recruited as a player. Some were better than others, and so like I try to use some of my experiences while I'm recruiting. So that's the first thing is that always recruiting for the next year and years after. Always
Right.
paying attention to up and coming players,
That's a
all that.
365 duty as a as a college coach. You're always
Yeah,
recruiting.
yeah, definitely. And like you have to be careful about trying to not burn bridges
Hmm.
um, with people. Uh, yeah, like we've we've signed two guys this year for this upcoming season that we recruited 2 years ago and chose
Hmm.
not to play for us 2 years ago, but uh, we never burnt that bridge, and both those players called us back up, and uh, yeah, now they're going to be playing for us. So, like I love that. I love that part of the off season as a coach.
Hmm.
The other thing too is like developing and working out our current team. Like that's obviously super important.
Yeah.
Um, and so, for us at the NAI level, uh, we have a certain amount of weeks um, that we can use as a season, and you don't have to use all of those during the regular season necessarily. So we actually saved 2 weeks to have some spring practices postseason. We actually just got done with those a little over a week ago,
Hmm.
so that was really good. And
What's
then,
the really quick? What's the thought process behind that? Having a
yeah,
practice after your season's over.
yeah, yeah. Well, obviously we had a little bit of a gap
Hmm.
from the end of the season to doing that. But I think it's just
Right.
like I think one of the most important things of it um, is making sure that you're not without your team for too long of a period of time.
Yeah.
Uh, Making sure that we're still building chemistry and camaraderie. And working on things that we, maybe didn't do so well this last year, and we want to be better at this next year, or introducing some new things for this next year. And a lot of the guys there, most all of them, are returners, as we might not have new guys on campus yet. Uh, and so, yeah, just like keeping the core strong, basically,
Hmm.
and trying to build on something for the summer. Once May 15th hits here in a couple weeks, we'll be able to kind of start coaching again all the way through July 31st. So we'll have workouts. We have a training camp this year in June for a week. It's an intensive training camp. And yeah, so off season as a college coach, you got to develop your current roster. Um, and your whole goal is to be better for the next year, right? Everyone has the same goal of winning a championship.
Hmm.
So, yeah, off season so far, yeah, recruiting and working with your current guys, workouts, practices, weight room sessions, film sessions, all that kind of stuff, right? Um, and then, yeah, I'm trying to think what else do I do. It sounds funny. I know I said that I don't work out like I did as a player, but I do actually like try to get some of my workouts in or work out with our guys, like instead of just
Hmm.
working them out, work out with them, whether that's in the weight room or getting shots up or basketball, basketball skill type stuff. Um, I take pride in still being able to like be an example of
Don't you
some things
forget.
with my work ethic. Oh yeah, I know. It's funny. I still believe I'm the best shooter in the program.
Let's go.
Like so like I'll talk like. smack with our players and all that kind of stuff, and sometimes get reps in certain drills or anything like
That's
that.
awesome.
No, it's kind of fun. Keeps it fun. Like basketball's supposed to be fun, right? So, uh, yeah, I don't know. I think the off season is really important as a coach, and I think it's really important to stay connected while you're recruiting, staying connected with your current players. Like, sometimes you have players that go home for certain parts of the summer, and you don't want to be a stranger to them. Like,
Right.
we're a second family to a lot of guys, right? And
Mm.
the guys in our program, and so um, I it's cliche to say, but there really isn't an off season. We're just not playing games right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. What about you? Like, do you feel like you have an off season right now? Like, how do you view that?
I mean, yes and no. I just with like what I've been doing recently, just like the pandemic and moving like 4 times in the last like 4 years.
Yeah,
I haven't been with the program over the course of multiple seasons, so I haven't. I'll join in, at the beginning of the year with the team, and then by the time the end of the year comes, I've either moved or whatever. So I haven't gone through a full cycle of an off season with the same program, but um, I know I've kept in contact with a lot of players that I used to coach, and just like told them, like, give them an idea of a plan of what they need to be doing this year. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to bombard them, because really, and kind of you hit on this, that there's no off season, and you really want to stay in touch. And like the important part is like throughout the season, it's really about getting your team to perform at maximum capacity, but individual skills, you just don't have the time to really develop that in the season. So
yeah,
the off seasons are really like a really vulnerable time of like you're either taking your next step as a player or you're not. It's and
right,
so that's really important. And so kind of what I'm doing now, I'm doing a lot more just like individual training and like small group training, not for any particular team. And so it's a lot of working around AU circuit schedules. Making sure we're not doing camps on Saturdays and Sundays. That doesn't,
right,
everyone's gone. You don't want to do anything too crazy right before that, because then players won't want to really put in work, because they're just about to go see if they can get scouted and noticed and exposed. They don't want to be too tired or whatever. So it's a lot of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Hey, we're gonna go hard, and really, what it comes down to is like, it's a lot of guidance. I don't like calling myself like a skills trainer, because that's not what I am. Because like knowing how to develop a kid's mindset isn't necessarily a basketball skill, but it's like
right,
skillful to have, I guess. So I don't like calling it a trainer. Like, it's, you really just teach them how to become better players. Like, that's really it.
yeah,
Um, I had a conversation with some of the kids the other day where they come from another trainer who worked a lot on isolation moves, where it's like, that's awesome, but like realistically, like, this is a pretty boring answer, but if you can play really good defense and if you can shoot from the outside, catch and shoot, there's a spot for you somewhere. um, and so like let's not get too crazy with it. Like, your catch and shoot is not like the greatest thing in the world. So like, let's work on off ball movement into your shot, and like, let's start in close. Let's really work from the ground up, like where your foot placement is, like, like all that type of stuff. That's really boring, but like honestly is what gets you on teams. And so like, if you want to be a really good AU player, you really want to be a good park player, go find a trainer who can do a lot of isolation stuff. And like, obviously everyone kind of has that in their bag, and like, it's kind of just like also a reminder of, when kids are by themselves, they're not working on defense, they're not working on catch and shoot, they're not doing that stuff. They're working on moves where they can go and destroy their friend at the park. Like, that's, and
yeah,
like everyone does that. So it's like, let's work on stuff that's also really important to the game that you're probably not working on. um,
yeah,
so doing a lot of that stuff. I'm a big fan of doing live game situation type training. Like, we have coming off of a, this is one that we did last week. We're coming off of a ball screen, and you're reading the corner defender to see if you just go and go find a finish, or if he steps over too far, how to get the corner man the ball in the right place and then making a read off of that, which is a very real
Yeah.
situation. Like every drag screen, that's an option basically. If you have your shooter in the same side or the opposite side, and so like it's coming off your ball screen, how do you do that, and then where are you looking? Like you
Mm.
shouldn't just be looking at the rim. You need to be looking at defenders because that's how you know what to do. So it's a lot of that stuff. A lot doing everything that you can to help a player that isn't always working in a group that's that structured, and so that's a lot of the off season from my point of view, and really just kind of getting them ready for the season, kind of learning what their goals are. Like, what are some things that we really need to drill in right now? Like, it could be boring, but we could just do left-handed finishes the whole time, and like
Yeah.
you're gonna hate it, but you're gonna be better at left-handed finishes at the
Right.
end of this. So it's a lot of that, and just like you were saying about recruiting, it's a lot of relationship stuff. You can't really call out a player too hard right away when you just meet them because you don't people's basketball craft is really important to them. It's their future for a lot of these kids, especially the really talented ones. You're really kind of barging into their territory, so you have to earn trust with them. You have to show that you
Yeah.
know what you're talking about, and you have to show that you actually care about what they do. So it's a lot of relationship building as well. So that's really the cool part.
I think I think if I was to, and you can probably relate to this too because you definitely have your busy times of year. Um, but I think the one thing too that's like non-basketball related as a coach for the off season is getting to like spend time with family again. Um, I was kind of like as I was starting to get into coaching, I definitely had people tell me this of like make sure that you're spending time with your family, spending time with your wife, or if you have kids, like spending
Mm-hmm.
time with your kids and everything. Because honestly, like during the season, it's very limited time, like open extracurricular time to hang out with like my wife or with family or friends or anything like that. Like so, finding that time in the off season. Is really like important to me as a coach and like any other coaches that are kind of getting into it or maybe have a hard time with that, like I would definitely suggest making sure that your relationships are good and spending time with those that you love and care about too, because like
Yeah,
it's bigger than just basketball. Like we love what we get to do, um, but you don't always get to do that if everything else isn't going well. So,
for sure.
yeah, like that's really important, and I think that's important too for like you players out there. I think it's also important to make sure that you do have some time for some other things. Like you can still get all your work done, you can still improve, you can still have time to get better at your game, but make sure that you still have relationships because that's important. That's an important part of life. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
take a break from the game, or
yeah,
whether that be just you know putting the ball down for a while, or go play a different sport. That's huge. I mean,
yeah,
mental burnout, like it really doesn't matter how skilled you are if you're not motivated and excited to be somewhere, then you're not going to perform at your best level. So I think
yeah,
really everybody should be playing multiple sports. I think it's pretty clear that that's beneficial to everybody. But yeah, and honestly, I think we'll save that for another time because there's a lot to get into with that. But yeah, take a break. Not too long, but take a break for sure. Um,
yeah, definitely.
uh, I was gonna see, is there anything? I know we've been kind of talking about this kind of as we go, but is there anything like really in particular about um, advice for high school players or even college players in their off season for things that they need to be doing that we haven't really hit on yet? I feel like we've
You
hit
said
we've
high
hit a
school or
lot.
college?
Yeah, high school or college kids that like, hey, these are kind of your essentials that you need to be taking care of during your off season. We just kind of talked about it a little bit, whether that be specifically your own skill development and getting away from the game a little bit so you get kind of your mental right and all that kind of stuff. But is there anything else that you think is kind of important or noteworthy for players that are trying to improve?
Um, Man, I honestly think that we kind of covered a lot of it.
Mm,
Nothing else really comes to mind as far as like actually trying to improve. Um, I don't know. I think that if I was to add one more thing, I do think it's important for players, high school and college, if you are wondering what you need to do to increase your role or to get better, like you cannot be afraid to talk to your coach.
Yeah.
You straight up you can't. And high schoolers, do not rely on your parents to do that and to find out. Like 100%, you need to do it on your own.
Mm.
Um, and in college, that's the only choice because in college, your parents don't really get to call the coach and say, "Hey, what does my son or daughter need to do better?"
Yeah.
Um, you need to be able to do that and have open conversation with your coaches if you truly want to know. One thing, uh, so I right now I coach with my dad. My dad's the head coach at Bushnell, where I'm an assistant. And one thing that I truly appreciate about him, and I know that we're going to have him on here at some point, and so I want to make sure that we talk about this with him. But one thing that I appreciate about him and that I've definitely taken to heart and I will always carry with me as a coach is that he'll never lie to our players ever, no matter what. He'll tell the truth even if they don't want to hear it. Um, he at the beginning of every single season and one-on-ones, whenever he'll tell the players like, if you want to ask a question, make sure that you actually want to hear the answer. Make sure you want to hear the truth because we're never going to lie. So
Mm.
that's not to scare players. That's to let players know um, that we have an open door policy. He has an open door policy to where if you actually want to improve on something, then like you just need to ask, and we'll tell you. Like he'll tell you. Um, I think sometimes that gets maybe taken for granted, and if players like if you have a coach that is willing to tell you the truth, you you need to take advantage of that. Whether you agree with it or not, um, having a coach that won't lie to you, that's super important. But yeah, to kind of get back to my point, like you need to like as a player, if you really want to know what you need to do to maybe grow in your role or have a different role in the future, like you can't be afraid to talk to your coaches. That's the only other thing that I would really add for both high schoolers and college players.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, to have a coach that's not going to try to save face and try to be friends with everybody is really important. That you understand your role as a head coach, and that's to win basketball games, but really to help your team and your players improve. And if I mean, everybody can be critical of somebody else. Like there's nobody's game that isn't completely polished. So yeah,
For
that's
sure.
huge. A big thing for high schoolers, and this is big just because I kind of got to walk through it, especially as someone who, um, you know, just wasn't on that level to be really like highly recruited, and just like the things that you need to be doing as a high schooler if you really want to play college basketball, like it'll really show if you really want to or not, because you really have to put yourself out there and um, be assertive. Like that's really the key
Yeah.
word. You got to be putting together your own film, sending it to a lot of coaches, because honestly, most of them probably won't open it. And then the amount of
It's
coaches
very
that
true.
will not watch your film is pretty high, but like you never know who's going to open it. And even then, just kind of getting some name recognition, because ask about open gyms that they have in the summer. Every school has them. Make sure you go and play, because really that's what it's about. As and Jordan talked about recruiting just a little bit ago, there has to be a significant amount of interest in somebody. You're not just going to
Yeah.
fly out to some Indiana or Chicago, circuit or whatever because of some kid who you're like, he might be our 18th guy on the bench. Like it's not going to happen. So like, you really have to do the recruiting for them. Go show up at an open gym, and like you can, like they don't. All they have to do is go to their own gym and watch their own guys, and you happen to be there. So like self recruit, send a lot of emails to a lot of people, and be honest about what you can bring to the table. And like, um, this is something for me that like some people might see as a little bit of a shot, but like is really like a big staple and something that's really important. Like something that I really brought to the table was that I was never going to be a problem off the court. Grades weren't
Mm-hmm.
ever going to be an issue, and that I was a good leader. So like everything, like game aside, like what coaches don't want to have is players on their bench that they have to babysit. Like they already have a starting five. They already have, a 7 or 8 man rotation or whatever it may be, that they have to worry about. Hey, are these guys' grades good? Are these guys, in the gym working? Are they messing around? Are they getting, you know, they getting handcuffed outside of bars? Like, what's wrong with them? How do we keep them straight? So like, if that's not going to be you, your freshman or sophomore year of college, you need to make it clear that you're never going to be an issue off the court and that you're going to do the right things on the court. Like
Yeah.
as simple as that. So, yeah, for any high schoolers that are not being highly recruited, you need to be emailing a lot and a lot of coaches, especially if you really want to be a good basketball player. Include your film, full game film, because anybody can look good in highlights. You can put together highlights if you want, but I would suggest putting in game film so they can see you play for a whole game, and then yeah, include everything that you really bring to the table. I think that's
I
huge, and definitely going and playing in front of them, because not everyone. It would be awesome if everybody wanted to go and recruit you, but it's just not always the case.
I definitely. I don't want to get. Maybe I shouldn't get too much into the weeds of this. I don't know, um, but I definitely feel like we could talk about that subject that you just kind of talked about for like 30 plus minutes.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I don't know if you want to get into the weeds or not of that, but there's a
Mm.
lot that you said like that I agree with and I would add on to.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, let's
so
let's uh let's have this be our teaser.
okay,
Where we
yeah,
truly we have, just as like a whole, like when it comes to this podcast, what we really want to do is bring kind of a light to the other side of basketball, whether that be, players that are getting into their coaching career, people that are trying to make their own playing career happen. But and we have a lot of really awesome high level guests that we're going to be bringing on, but we also have a really long sheet of things that we have things to really dive into, because when we bring on a guest, we want to dive into their story, because you never know who you're going to be able to relate to and kind of find someone to latch onto of, hey, there's an example of someone who could do it. But we don't always get a chance to really really dive into the weeds with them, and so that's kind of what this time is for. So I think that'll be good kind of a teaser for us to really lock into some other time. So if you're someone who's not highly recruited, tune into the pod.